Hey there, guys, it's Will. Not really try to convince you, but to sort of generate a general awareness of why working with a recruiter is a good thing, depending how you use your partnership with a recruiter. For this example, I'm going to use SEKAI Recruitment, my own agency, as an example. As the name suggests, SEKAI is a Japanese term which means world. World recruitment. You could loosely translate SEKAI Recruitment as world recruitment. And the name of my agency sort of inflects this notion of bridging talent on an international scale. It's like the view of Sekai recruitment. Although right now Sekai does focus on the domestic front, there is view to scale to a more international focus. So I want to bring to your attention some numbers and a couple countries in regions such as the UK, Japan, and China. Let's start with China. So as of March 2025, China's surveyed unemployment rate was 5.2%. Now these are general numbers. I got this from Microsoft Copilot. 5.2% is a significant number when you consider just how vast China is in population. Um, we're looking at in the billions here, if I'm not mistaken, for one, general country divided into so many regions and provinces and such and the like. So when you have an unemployment rate of 5.2%, you consider the economic climate, especially when we're looking at tariffs. I don't want to really get political here, but when you're looking at stuff like internationally placed tariffs against certain countries from America, as what's going on right now, you then start to get a sense of there are people that need work, and that's anywhere around the world. But I'm using China as an example, right? Obviously, if we look at these tariffs as an example on a general scale, there are certain industries that are affected. Whether it be to some degree a logistics-based company, or you could even say the import industry. Local to China, you have the factory and the warehouse industry heavily affected now, which inflects onto Western companies. People who utilize the drop shipping model, for example, who rely on suppliers in China, now they find it more difficult to source their stock. Do excuse me. So what ends up happening is that companies, especially the smaller businesses in the West, now we need to, especially those who deal with stock, the companies that deal with imports from countries like China, maybe even Colombia, maybe even India, countries like that. We now need to reevaluate our business models, our logistical operations with regards to how we import and deal with inventory, right? But then I had a thought, and I thought to myself, well, if you have all these people potentially, should I say, unemployed, for lack of a better term, what kind of industry transcends the borders of internationally based tariffs, which therefore make certain industries difficult to deal with? And I think for now, because things are cyclical in these industries, for now, tech, remote, digital, and maybe to a degree AI transcends the borders of these internationally based tariffs. It really depends on the situation. But on a light general scale, right now, if you want to overcome the limitations of import tax or import tariffs, then the business models that will survive are those that depend on the digital front, right? Because there are no digitally placed tariffs or taxes per se on hiring international staff, and that's where recruitment comes in really handy. So Sekai has this sort of I don't want to use the word strategy, but this idea, this concept in place whereby we source digital talent from the likes of China, and we find a way to bridge that talent to the West for companies that need this resource, right? And of course, the question comes into play: what happens to the talent that maybe isn't digitally inclined? What happens to the talent that doesn't rely on skill sets within software, within tech? Well, I would say to that, Sekai Recruitment does focus particularly on the digital front. So, with that in mind, I wouldn't say it's not a concern, because it is a concern, because these market forces affect everyone at different scales of operation. But for companies that deal with like pure tech, it's less of an effect, right? Because of the sheer nature of the digital front. I have some more numbers here. So as of March 2025, Japan's unemployment rate stood at 2.4%, which was a slight decrease from 2.5% in February. So you can see that the unemployment rate in Japan is slightly less. Japan not being as big of a country as China, so that percentage may be a smaller sample than that of China. But again, we see a lot of potential in these particular markets, especially where technology um, you get new and emerging technologies from these particular countries. I think just recently in China we had the Canton Fair, right, which is an annual expo, an annual conference of new and emerging technology. It's a showcase of technology from different companies in Canton, which also is known as Guangzhou, and that happened recently, I believe. So, and you also have stuff like in the gaming sector, you have the Tokyo Game Show. You have all sort of different technology conferences that goes on to sort of showcase the technology coming up from these regions. So, Sekai sees a lot of opportunity in these particular companies. In the UK, job creation is the title of this particular article I got from Copilot. The fastest growing tech companies in the UK have generated 11,200 new jobs over the past 3 years and expect to add 4,200 more in the coming years. So the market really is ripe. The market really is rich for this technology sector. I don't think technology is going anywhere. In fact, technology is only sort of scaling and expanding in the modern digital realm. London remains the dominant tech hub, but cities like Manchester and Edinburgh are emerging as strong players in fintech and AI. Awesome. So, guys, just to wrap up this particular video, the premise of this video was why working with recruiters is only an advantage in the long run in the grand scheme of things. And I must say, if you do pair up with someone who has the connections to these markets, someone who has connections to the players, to decision makers in the market, then it's only an advantage to you as an applicant as long as you play the game right, the game of applying, the game of getting a role, building your career, stuff like that. Just to put out there, I am hiring for native Chinese localization stuff. Um, Generally speaking, I've had this position open for a while for Chinese and Japanese localization staff, but in particular, I'm looking for, well, Sekai is looking for Chinese, either fluent Chinese speakers or native Chinese with that level of native Chinese skill. So if that does interest you, just shout out to me on Instagram, or you could, better said, you could reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just send me a DM. My LinkedIn is basically my name, Williams Teddy Juma. So feel free. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around for this particular video, and I bid you all a great day. Bye bye now.